I'm going to start this video off just by showing you the chords themselves, and then at the end of the video I'll explain a little bit about why I chose these chords, and I'll give you some song suggestions as well. I've put timestamps in the description so you can skip to any part of the video that you want. So let's start with A. So I'm playing A by putting my first finger on fret 2 on the D string, my second finger on fret 2 on the G, and then my third finger on fret 2 on the B string. We want to try and avoid hitting this E string at the top, and you can do that by just aiming with the plectrum, but I like to use my thumb to mute that E string at the top so it doesn't ring out, and then I can strum all the strings and we actually don't hear that note. Some chords aren't that bad if you play an extra string, so if I actually play that E string, it doesn't sound too bad. It's not like other chords that sound really bad when you play that top string. You could also play it with your second finger on fret 2 on the D string, your third finger on fret 2 on the G, and then your little finger on fret 2 on the B string. If you wanted to, if you've got quite big fingers. You could also just play it with one finger and flatten fret 2 on the D, fret 2 on the G, and then fret 2 on the B. I'll put that in the diagram now. So more than likely with that one, I mean, you can still use your thumb and mute that string. You don't want to flatten that E string at the bottom, because then you'll get a different note and you'll be playing a different chord. So you won't be playing A if you do that. Some people can actually flatten those three strings, and again, I'll put that in the diagram now, and still play that E string at the bottom. But that's a very hard chord to change into, so don't worry about that. It depends on the context of the song. So if you've got a song that goes, you're probably going to want to flatten your finger rather than play A with three different fingers, okay? But yeah, the next chord is A minor. So I'm going to put my first finger on 1 on the B string, my second finger on 2 on the D, and then my third finger on 2 on the G. Again, we want to try and avoid hitting this E string at the top, so I'm using my thumb again. And I might actually make a separate video on how to use your thumb to mute those strings if anyone's interested. You could use your second finger on fret 1 on the B, your third finger on fret 2 on the D string, and then your little finger on fret 2 on the G if you wanted to. Okay, play it like that instead. With these chords that I'm showing you, it's really important that you point your fingers, okay, and that we don't flatten them too much, because if you flatten them, you're going to mute strings that you don't want to mute, and you'll end up getting a chord that sounds a bit more like that, when it should sound like that. Okay. So you could probably see the ridges of my fingers, where those lines are, that's where the strings have kind of indented my fingers. So you don't want to play with the flat bit of your fingers, you don't want to play with that bit. You want to make sure that you're pointing your fingers and playing with your fingertips. Okay, so the next chord is C. So this is 1 on the B string, 2 on the D string, and 3 on the A string. And I'm using the same fingers as the frets that I'm in. So I've got my first finger on fret 1 on the B string, my second finger is on fret 2 on the D, and my third finger is on fret 3 on the A. And I'm using my thumb to mute this top string again, because I don't want to let that ring out. Again, you could do it like that, it's not any easier, but if you really wanted to do it with your second finger, your third finger, and your little finger, you could do. Okay, so the next chord is D. This is fret 2 on the G string with my first finger, fret 2 on the E string with my second finger, and then fret 3 on the B string with my third finger. Okay. Again, we want to try and avoid hitting the E string at the top and the A string, so I'm going to use my thumb to mute both of them. That's quite a difficult thing to do. So don't worry about it too much. Just try and avoid hitting the E string with that one, because this is one of those chords where if you actually hit the A string, it doesn't sound too bad, okay? It's the same with a lot of other chords. You can hit some accidental strings and it's not going to sound too bad, okay? So the next one is D minor. This is fret 1 on the E string at the bottom, fret 2 on the G string, and fret 3 on the B string. So that's my first finger on fret 1 on the E string, my second finger on fret 2 on the G string, and then my third finger on fret 3 on the B. And again, I'm going to use my thumb a little bit so I can avoid hitting that A string. And I know it is kind of weird from that angle. It probably looks like I'm muting the D string as well, but I'm not, okay? A lot of what you're doing when you're playing open chords, pointing your fingers a lot to make sure that you don't hit any unwanted strings. And sometimes that is, you know, you're talking like millimeters, less than millimeters of space. You know, if I put my finger here, I can let it ring out. On the E string, I just move it a tiny bit, it starts muting, but there's not that much movement between that, okay? So you want to be really, really precise if you can. The next chord is E. So this is my first finger on fret 1 on the G, my second finger on fret 2 on the A, and then my third finger on fret 2 on the D string. We can hit all the strings with that one. Again, if you wanted to, you could do it with your second finger on fret 1 on the G, your third finger on fret 2 on the A string, and then your little finger on fret 2 on the D. So you can do it that way as well. The next chord is E minor, so I'm going to do that like this. So that's my first finger on fret 2 on the A, and then my second finger on fret 2 on the D string. You could use your second finger on fret 2 on the A, and then your third finger on fret 2 on the D string as well, if you wanted to play it like that. I think it's better to learn it like that, generally, because if you're going into like a chord like G, it's an easier change. Which leads me to my next chord, which is G. So this is your first finger on fret 2 on the A string, your second finger on fret 3 on the E, your third finger on fret 3 on the B, and then your little finger on fret 3 on the E string at the bottom. Okay, again, you can hit all the strings with this one as well. You don't actually need this finger, okay? G can be played with or without, so I could play it like that. Or I could use my third finger to play that note at the bottom and just leave out my little finger. Or if you really wanted to, you could use your second finger on the A string, fret 2, your third finger on the E string, fret 3, and then your little finger on the E string at the bottom, fret 3. Which, you know, might be useful if you're changing it to C. Generally, I prefer playing it that way that I showed you before, because a lot of songs go into a D chord, and if they go into a D chord, I can keep that third finger there and change like that. So the reason I picked these 8 chords is because they're relatively easy to play. They're in thousands of other songs, and they're the basis of most of the bar chords that you're going to learn. So for example, this A chord is virtually the same shape as this B chord. Okay, so with the B chord, all we're doing is doing the same shape, but then using our first finger to create a bar. And that bar allows us to move that chord around the neck. It's the same as most of the other bar chords that you're going to learn. So like A minor and B minor are the same shape as well. The 8 songs that I've picked are Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater Revival, Wild Thing by the Troggs, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, Three Little Birds by Bob Marley, Heart of Gold by Neil Young, Knocking on Heaven's Door by not Bob Marley, that's not Bob Marley, by Bob Dylan. No Rain by Blind Melon, and then Candy by Paolo Nutini. So Candy by Paolo Nutini does actually have a D7, so I'll put a picture of that up on the screen now. But you could probably use a D in its place. It's still going to work with the song, it's just not going to be completely authentic to the original. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, hope you found it useful, and thanks for watching.